the Middle East this morning, where Hamas says it has responded positively to a US-backed ceasefire proposal, but is seeking amendments to the terms. The group emphasized its demand for a permanent ceasefire and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Reportedly, a Hamas official said that the group has not rejected the proposal, but considers Israel's response incompatible with what had been agreed. Another Hamas official accused US envoy Steve Mnuchin of complete bias towards Israel. Mnuchin, who authored the proposal, has called Hamas's response totally unacceptable and said it only takes us backward. He added that the group should accept the current framework as the basis for negotiations. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hamas continues to reject the US plan and has vowed that Israel would continue operations in Gaza to secure return of the hostages and defeat Hamas. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz blamed Hamas for prolonging the war by refusing to release the hostages and disarm. Under the proposed deal, Hamas would release 10 living hostages and the bodies of 18 others in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners and detainees held in Israel. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, protesters gathered at Hostages Square, calling for the release of the remaining hostages and an end to the war in Gaza. We're now joined by Jim Rice, who is a professor of international law located in Vigan, the Philippines. Thank you very much, Jim, for joining us. Hamas says it hasn't rejected this deal, Jim, and obviously these ongoing diplomatic developments, they seem like a never-ending game in chess. Is this a significant move for you today, this ceasefire deal proposal being accepted?
Well, I think everyone is hoping that this conflict will draw to an end. So yes, I agree. As to whether an agreement will eventually be made, I'm not sure. I think that the sticking point is probably, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza and a permanent ceasefire. But I would think that one of the things that your segment didn't mention was the food aid, or rather lack thereof, the lack of food aid. And I believe that, as a start, Israel just simply has to allow the unrestricted flow of their vital aid to those people who are starving in Gaza.
Also, Jim, we know the details of what side wants. We have the full disarmament. Hamas has been very clear that it wants an end to this war. Israel, once again, have only offered a temporary truce of 60 days, along with a return of all the hostages. Do you think this deal is really going to get done? I mean, the two contradicting objectives here, they seem untenable. They seem unable to reach a compromise.
Well, that certainly has been the case in the past. I mean, so far, there really hasn't been a compromise. There was a ceasefire prior to the second Trump administration that fell apart, and things have only deteriorated since that time. Again, if I can just, bring my perspective of international humanitarian law, what seems to have been the case is that Israel has been using food as a weapon in this conflict.
Yes, and we'll get onto that very briefly, but Netanyahu is also feeling political discontent within his own country. We've seen the visuals of the protests going on in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and other Israeli places alike. What are your thoughts on the domestic backlash that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing, the domestic pressure he's facing from Israeli residents to end this war?
Well, yeah, that's a very good point that you're making. Netanyahu is really in a difficult position because his government is being kept afloat or kept in power by a loose coalition of very hardline right-wing parties. And at the same time, he's facing, as you mentioned, this grassroots body of more progressive individuals who would really like to see an end to this war. And I believe that if the conflict were to end, say, tomorrow, Netanyahu's position as prime minister would be very weak indeed.
Yes, and Jim, Hamas says Steve Witkoff is a biased mediator. Does that undermine America's role? Obviously, the US is a staunch ally of Israel. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, Steve Witkoff isn't actually a mediator. He's not a diplomat. He's basically a real estate developer and a golfing buddy of Donald Trump. So I don't really see him as being qualified for this kind of very, very difficult international mediation. But is he biased? Yeah, I would say he is.
Yes, and we need to talk about, obviously, the humanitarian situation that is ongoing. The world is responding. There is growing opposition globally, and we're seeing it happen with governments as well. You also have this controversial private aid distribution, these points where these 4 points in the Gaza Strip, 3 of which are in the south, 1 of which is in the center of Gaza. Some people are saying that they are weaponizing aid. Some people are saying that this private organization, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, has selectively chosen its points in order to displace the people of the Gaza Strip. What are your thoughts on the current humanitarian state in the Gaza Strip, Jim?
It's catastrophic. Again, these people in Gaza have been relocated so many times. I'm not sure if anybody can really keep track of how many times they've been forced to move from one location to the other. And in all of these locations, the conditions have been appalling. Throughout this time, they've been subjected to bombings and attacks. So it's just a very difficult situation, and one can only hope that a ceasefire will be put in place, and that end to the bombings and the attacks
Jim
can
Rice.
be put in place.
Jim Rice, thank you. You are staying